Welcome PSY 310 students. This is my week 2 commentary as we are leading up to next weekend's Getting Started workshop. Remember that the first few weeks of the course are all about foundations and thinking very carefully about what is a personality and how is it studied. So last week, hopefully you were working your way through Chapter 1 and that you were picking up on David Funder's very wise notion that to compare the study of personality to putting together a puzzle or being a detective is a pretty good way of looking at it. In other words, one is constructing an understanding rather than pigeonholing and making a judgment. And that's a really important point. The other major issue from Chapter 1 was the fact that theory has a role to play and that psychologists both work with people having personalities but also work with theories, which is to say trying to develop some generalized roadmaps that will make understanding a person and working with persons, and indeed predicting the future behavior of persons, more feasible. So there are 5 basic approaches that the book is organized around, and we'll soon be looking at each of those approaches, starting with the trait approach and the biological approach and the analytic approach, and then the existential phenomenological approach, and finally the very contemporary cognitive approach, or if you would, learning and cognitive approach. So these are all approaches really to theory building, because remember this book is written by a researcher and the perspective of a clinician, or for that matter a military personnel trainer or an organizational human resource hiring specialist. All of those applied practices of psychology really look at the study of personality in a slightly different way. And clearly now, and I see some evidence of this on the discussion board, you have thought about the difference between a personality and an image and the core sense of self and ego, and these related but distinctive concepts that are really fundamental building blocks for theory as well as practice. So all of that was in Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is all about what I would think of as the toolbox for the personality researcher. And notice this isn't the same as the toolbox for the clinician or the applied psychologist, but rather for one attempting to build models and theories of personality. So in looking at this week's research methods course, it's a very complicated, as a toolbox always is, it's a complicated set of concepts and practices, and the important thing is grasping the big picture, meaning that this is a model building or a theory building toolbox. So by all means, put questions that you might have about specific research methods on the discussion board so that we can use examples to explore them further. Incidentally, just to step back one, I did assign the chat box article so as to stimulate your thinking about what about personalities in non-humans, and in this case personalities in artificially intelligent technologies, because again it deepens our understanding what personality is and is not in humans. And again, thank you for those of you who responded to the trigger questions about personality in chat boxes. So this week, again, I'm thinking students are still getting their feet on the ground. Most of you have your textbooks now. I noticed that a number of you are confident enough not to go to the workshop in the coming weekend, and that's all well and good. I would encourage you to consult with me about your course projects before I depart for the Czech Republic. Remember that I will be leaving Maine on February 8th, and so our meeting in real time will be a little bit more difficult, although it will still be quite possible through Google Hangouts or another choice of video conferencing technology. The course project is how you customize the course for your own interests and to maximize your value of your academic program itself. So developing those course projects, again, is going to take some creativity on your part, and I see my job as your coach. I will not give you the one right answer, but rather I will help you develop a useful project that is related to course content. So my point is, we will be discussing this in some detail at the workshop this coming weekend, and if you're unable to make either the Saturday campus or Sunday phone bridge event, I would strongly recommend that we talk one-on-one so as to begin to think about, and I can help, think about your course projects. Okay, regarding the image that's on our website, again, looking at the issue of personality and non-human species, this is a fascinating study in its own right from the University of Arizona. But more to the point is the image shows us that to study a personality, one first describes it, and where it says their individual personality of the bee, that's what we're talking about, and then explains it, and that's the causes of personality, and then finally looks at what the notion of personality can actually predict about future behavior. So notice that first of all we want to, with an open mind, simply describe what we see and what our data are showing us, and then we may or may not go to the level of explanation as to why a personality is the way it is. And then finally, and most practically actually, is what I call the great so what, which means what can it predict and how can it be useful. So this is a good graphic to take a look at to see the different kinds of causal domains. And it introduces a concept not found in Funder, which is the notion of a collective personality. So that's this week's graphic. I'll try to put a new graphic up each week in addition to my weekly commentaries. Sometimes people are like me, you're a visual learner, and visual information triggers your thinking in ways that are different than verbal information. All right, let me just see if there's anything more. I don't think there is, because we have the workshop at which I'll be able to give you more of my thoughts about where we're going, and you will be able to ask whatever questions you have about what's not clear in terms of course design or course expectations. So let me just take one more look at the chapter 2 of this week. And let me note that a key concept which you will be tested on, two things. One is, what is a research design? Research comes in great many designs. And then secondly, what are the four kinds of data that the research designer has to think about in terms of putting the personality puzzle together? So all of that is, again, it gets very technical, and it goes way beyond what we're expecting in this course. If you want to take future courses in research methods or psychometrics of personality assessment, that would be something for the future. But this is really opening the door that was introduced to you in Psych 100 a little bit further, and looking at kinds of data as well as the basic kinds of research design. So again, it's dry, but later on when you are reading literature and you're thinking critically, knowing how design actually changes results will be an important insight, an important opportunity to think about critical thinking on your part. So thank you for your good work in the first week. And again, I'm around at almost any time to answer questions. Always happy to do that. And some of you I will look forward to seeing this weekend.